Thank you for being here. Not really sure why you clicked on this one, but if you clicked because you saw something about racism on the thumbnail, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you where I stand in the first 10 seconds right here, right now. I think believing racism doesn't exist in America in 2026 is freaking delusional. And I don't think you have to be racist to be a part of this conversation. Actually, that's kind of the whole reason I wanted to have it. Because one of the biggest obstacles to talking about racism is that the second you mention race, people immediately start wanting to defend themselves. I'm not racist. Okay? I didn't say you were. I'm saying racism exists around people who aren't racist as well. And I think there's a difference between those two statements that we have somehow lost the ability to sit with. Because I grew up with a very different relationship with race than a lot of black people I've met throughout my life. I was that black kid in predominantly white environments. I was a military brat. I moved around a lot. Most of my friends were white or of a different ethnicity or cultural background. And for a good portion of my childhood, I wasn't waking up every morning thinking about being black. I was just me. And honestly, there was a certain privilege in being able to experience childhood in that way. Then I moved to Metro Atlanta around 7th grade. And for the first time in my life, I went to a predominantly black school. And that was culture shock. Which sounds backwards coming from someone who's a black person, right? But suddenly, I wasn't the only black kid anymore. And somehow I became the odd one out around people who looked just like me. The way that I talked, the things that I liked, the things I experienced, the people I was accustomed to being around. And that's when I started realizing something I wouldn't really have the words for until I got older. Two people can have the same skin color and still grow up looking through completely different windows. And I think that's important to this conversation, because sometimes people hear somebody say racism exists and immediately thinks that means every white person hates black people. No. That's such a shallow way or a shallow version of what racism even looks like. Sometimes it's blatant. Sometimes it's systematic. Sometimes it's somebody saying exactly what they mean. And sometimes it's an idea somebody gave you when you were 6 years old that you never really stopped to question. You know, I remember being in college taking African American literature. Those were some of my favorite classes. African American literature, black film, because I was learning things that challenged the lens I grew up with. We'd watch older films, study black representation, talk about blackface, stereotypes, exploitation, who got to tell black stories and how those stories shaped the way people saw black people. And I remember one white student getting frustrated during one of these conversations. I don't remember exactly what book we were reading and discussing, but I remember the feeling of what she was saying. Basically, she was like, I don't understand why black people are still upset with us. You know, we didn't create slavery. And I understood what she meant and what she was trying to say, because from her individual perspective, she hadn't done anything wrong. She wasn't saying she hated black people. She wasn't defending slavery either. She was basically trying to figure out, why am I being associated with something I didn't personally do? And I remember raising my hand and saying something I still kind of believe to this day. I think all of us are a little prejudiced. I think every single one of us has probably carried an idea about a group of people that wasn't originally ours. Because think about how children learn about people. You don't come out the womb knowing stereotypes. Somebody teaches you. Maybe you're in your car and your dad sees somebody and makes a certain comment. Maybe your mom locks the door when certain people walk past the car. Maybe somebody tells a joke at Thanksgiving. Maybe every time the news shows a certain neighborhood, there's a certain story attached to it, and it's always crime. You're 7 years old. You're not sitting there conducting a sociological analysis. You're absorbing everything around you. And eventually, somebody else's thoughts start sounding like your own. Becoming an adult doesn't automatically delete whatever you downloaded as a child. You gotta actually inspect some of that shit. And sometimes meeting real people is what finally breaks those curses. You grow up hearing those people are like this. Then one day, you become friends with one of those people. And you're like, oh shit, they're literally just a person. And now, something you believed for 15 years has a crack in it. And you know what? That's growth, love. That's why I don't think the goal is walking around screaming, I'm not racist! I'm not prejudiced! I'd rather be aware enough to ask, where did I get these thoughts from? Are these thoughts actually mine? Has my own experiences supported these thoughts? Would I want somebody making these same assumptions about me? Now, these are much harder conversations to have. Right now, I'm 33 years old. I'm a mom. And I'm raising a little black boy. So race hits completely different for me. Because it's not just, what do I believe about the world? Now it's, what kind of world is my child walking out into? And that's where I can't pretend certain things don't scare me. Because every parent thinks they're doing what they're supposed to do. You teach your child manners. You teach them right from wrong. You educate them. You protect them. You tell them what to do if something goes wrong. You tell them who to call. You try to know their friends' names. You try to know who they are. And then you turn on the news and you see another mother who probably did all that too. And her baby still isn't coming home. That's the part that gets me. Because there's a point where motherhood forces you to acknowledge, I cannot physically protect this child from everything for the rest of his life. I can't. And maybe that's where faith has become more important to me. Because eventually, I have to lift my child up to God and say, I've done what I can, Lord. Please cover what I can't. And even saying that as a mom, as a mother, that's hard. Because I don't want to surrender control over protecting my own child. But the truth is, I never completely had it. And that's part of why this situation in Mississippi has been sitting so hard with me. An 18-year-old black young man goes out for the 4th of July and doesn't come home. And right now, there are still questions about exactly what happened. I'm intentionally saying questions because I wasn't there. You weren't there. The internet wasn't there. And somebody asking questions isn't the same thing as somebody having the answers. But this is also where the internet becomes both one of the greatest things ever created and one of the most dangerous. Because people can notice inconsistencies. People can preserve information. Families can get attention when they feel ignored. Millions of eyes can look at something that might have once stayed local. That's powerful. But those same millions of people can decide somebody is guilty before an investigation ever happens, and that's also dangerous. Both things can be true at the same time. And I'm not gonna lie. One thing about this situation that made me raise an eyebrow was seeing people connected to the situation raising money. My immediate emotional reaction was, wait, what? Because I know if I knew somebody who lost their child under mysterious circumstances, my instinct would be that resources should be pouring towards that grieving family. But that's my reaction. I don't think if you are not guilty, if you're not a suspect, if you haven't been arrested, why there even needs to be a page for you to be collecting donations, unless you set that up because that's your nephew, your kids, your grandson's best friend, and you want to help that child's mother or their family. But again, that's just me. Not saying that that's evidence or anything. But furthermore, here's where race enters the conversation, whether some people like it or not. America has history. Mississippi has history. Black Americans have historical reasons to look at certain situations and say, hold on now, we're going to need a little bit more information. That distrust didn't just fall out of the sky. And I think that's what my college classmate couldn't fully understand all those years ago. She was looking at herself. I didn't do anything. And black people were looking at history. Something's already been done. Those are two completely different conversations. And if neither person is willing to understand the other lens, every conversation about race becomes a fight. Social media makes that even harder because the most extreme person gets amplified. The racist comments get screenshotted. The hateful responses go viral. The conspiracy gets 10 million views before the correction gets 10,000. Everybody picks a team. And suddenly, a human being's death becomes content. That's probably the part that bothers me the most. Because there's a mother somewhere whose child is gone. This ain't an episode for her. She doesn't get to close the app. She doesn't get to swipe to the next story. This is her life now. Meanwhile, strangers can make reaction videos, run up views, make money, argue in the comments, and then move to whatever happens next week. And that is something I think we should be uncomfortable with. But that's just me. So when somebody tells me racism doesn't exist anymore, I can't agree. That doesn't mean I think everybody walking around is secretly racist. I don't. I think history leaves fingerprints. It leaves them on institutions, on families, on communities, on language, on fear, on how people perceive each other, and sometimes on thoughts we didn't even realize weren't originally our own. The responsibility I think we have as adults is to examine those thoughts, not feel guilty for existing, not apologize for something your great-great-grandfather might have done, but examine yourself. Stay curious, meet people, travel, learn history, question what you were taught, and have enough humility to admit maybe there's something about somebody else's experiences that I don't understand yet. Because I know there are things about your life that I don't understand, that I might not ever understand if I weren't open enough to listen. There are experiences I will never have. That's okay. I can still listen. And as a mother, that's probably what I want most for my son. I don't want him growing up terrified of everybody who doesn't look like him. I also don't want him growing up naive enough to believe everybody will automatically see his humanity the way I do. That's a hard balance. I want him aware without being afraid, proud of who he is. And I want him to believe that he is the best that he can be, regardless of his race or skin color, or how he was brought into this world. I want him to also be able to recognize prejudice without letting hatred make a home inside of him. And above everything else, I want him covered, because I can teach him everything I know, but eventually he's going to have to walk into this world without me standing beside him. And all I can do is prepare him, love him, pray over him, and trust God with the places that I cannot follow. And if you've been sitting here this whole time really listening, maybe that's all I'm asking from this conversation. Don't confuse being a good person with never having anything left to learn. You can have a good heart and still have blind spots. I know I do. That's why conversations like this matter. Not so we can decide who the bad people are, but maybe we can understand each other a little better before another tragedy forces us to try. I appreciate you for sitting with me through this one. I love you. I'll sit with you in the next one. Peace.